Good afternoon, and welcome back to class. This is part 2 of the rhetorical analysis. Hopefully you've watched part 1 as you were completing your initial introduction to the speeches that you've chosen. You've completed your discussion board, so you've had your first kind of run through and experience with the speech that you have chosen. Don't forget that those discussion boards are due Sunday evening by 11:59. Your initial thread must be no less than 300 words, and your reply threads are no less than 100 each. Remember that this is about engaging in discourse. One of the, just as a little reminder, when you're doing your reply threads, I would actually reply to someone who has the same speech as you. So there's some discourse and conversation about that. The really cool thing about academic conversation is, or just conversations in general, is learning something more, maybe a different perspective or on something. So I would encourage you to do that because it would be more relevant for you as you are now shifting into this next portion, which will be week 9, as you are getting your information ready in order to write a paper for me. Your assignment for week 9 will be to do an outline, which means your research needs to be completed. I want it in an outline MLA format that has all of the research that you have completed, not just filler blanks, topic 1. I don't want to see that. I want to see the actual topic. I want to see your actual research. I want to see in-text citations next to everything that you have extracted or researched. I want to see a works cited page with correctly formatted bibliographies. You have resources at your fingertips that I have provided for you. But if, for whatever reason, if you don't want to look at that, okay, that's up to you. But you can Google it. How do you formulate a bibliography for MLA format, for a web source, for a print source? So please make sure these speeches actually are online, and you do need a bibliography for those. And what you can do is copy and paste the first line of the speech into Google, and it will take you directly to where that speech is, and then create a bibliography for that and from that site. So you're going to have at least a couple sources. One will be the bibliography for where you got the speech. The second bibliography will be, giving a little overview of the significance of that time period and why was the speech given. So you're going to have to do a little bit of research on that. Again, you're not committing a lot of time to it. That's a part of that overview in that second paragraph to get the reader's feet wet. Remember, in any type of analysis or argument, even synthesis, when you're dealing with a specific topic or a specific anytime you're dealing with a specific topic, you need to give an overview so the reader has some idea about what it is that that you're writing about. So hopefully, and I realized this when you guys watched, if you watched it, that argument video, I'd actually had a spoiler alert for each one of these speeches. So I'm not sure if you caught that or not, but hopefully not, and that you just kind of overlooked it and fast forwarded to where this stuff was important for you for that paper. But just to kind of go down the list a little bit as far as who did what. This first speech is Franklin Delano Roosevelt's first inaugural speech in 1933. And this speech was coming, the United States, the world was pretty much in a Great Depression at this moment. And, this is his first message to the people after his election. So, there's a lot of specifics as far as purpose as to why he gave the speech. The second speech is Susan B. Anthony. And it's really interesting. I grew up with Schoolhouse Rock, and they usually had Susan B. Anthony characterized as this old lady knitting, a flag in a rocking chair. which is not her at all. She was instrumental in the suffragette movement. And this speech is powerful. It's not a really long speech, but there's a lot of punch to that. What was interesting with that is she was arrested for voting because she was a woman. This speech is in 1873, and women were not allowed to vote. She is in the state of New York, and I thought it was interesting. She had a fine of $100. Now, perspective, $100 in 1873 is a lot of money. But she was instrumental and just fought hard and had this long-term vision of women in leadership. She spoke out on behalf of minorities and used the Constitution as part of her argument. The third speech is Martin Luther King Jr. This is his mountaintop speech, and it was actually delivered the night before his assassination. So there's a lot of significance with this. And this one was more for the sanitation workers. There were strikes that are going on, but it really does encompass the feel. I love to read Martin Luther King Jr.'s speeches. I don't know, it's because he's a pastor, and pastors have a way to just really engage you. And just reading it is so inspiring and enthralling throughout the entire speech. I don't want to do too much spoiler because you got to do some work on your own, but I don't mind to make sure that you're moving in the right direction. The fourth speech, I do apologize for language, but I think if you did choose that speech, you do understand the reasoning for this. This speech was General Patton. This was actually the speech that he gave the way they phrased it was inexperienced Third Army. This is in June of 1944, right before they were going to invade northern France. And he was having to get these young guys into a headspace of what they were getting ready to go into. And if you really put it into perspective, guys who are in my class, they are your age. And could you just imagine just the terror? And maybe they had, if they're inexperienced, I can make the leap and say they hadn't seen any type of war or interaction, any type of conflict. They hadn't possibly experienced the fact of losing friends and seeing them killed before their eyes. So they have all these possible images in their head. They're probably scared to death. And he has to get these kids in a headspace because there's a bigger picture here. Pretty much in all of these are famous speeches. You will notice, especially the FDR speech, famous quote out of that, famous quote out, all of these have them. Susan B. Anthony was the one about, the Constitution says we the people, not we the white, wealthy white men. That it was all of us. It was including women. It was including people of color. It's we as a united body, and that is so powerful there. General Patton, he has both of these I can't think of them right off the top of my head. Now, the reason why I bring this up, especially with that FDR, the only thing that we have to fear is fear itself. We still use that phrasing today, and it's true. The only thing we do have to fear is fear itself. We psych ourselves up and don't do things because we're afraid of them. And again, with that dynamic, people are scared. People have lost everything when the stock market crashed. They are in the throes of the Depression. Families were broken up. People couldn't feed their children. There was no work. There's soup lines. It was a really low point in our country, and just really having to unite a country, giving them hope that we're moving forward. And even though I know you're scared, Don't allow fear to hold you back. You've got to continue. We have to continue to move forward. We will work through it, and we will get out of it. It's really a powerful speech. All of these are really. I hope you took an opportunity to really read through all of them. These are just little snapshots in history. And also, I hope what you did when you were choosing your speech, did you try to get yourself in the mindset of this is a historical speech. Not one of these was, if you read this with a 21st century mindset, well, I don't know, you would lose the significance of some of these things. You may see some parallels in some of these speeches. I mean, even with the patent, I mean, with people that we're in conflict now, and allies with other countries. And so, we have a lot of young kids who are going in the battlefield, and I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure they're not saying his speeches exactly, but I'm pretty sure that when you're trying to psych these kids up to go into battle, you have to get them in a headspace in which to do that. And so it wouldn't be that far off. So what are you doing this week? All right, so you have now got your speech. I'm now giving you leave to start the research. You need to research, I've already told you who did it, so there's no excuse there. What was the time period? What was the dynamic? What was going on that warranted this speech? And that's important. That's a part of that overview. Why were they giving it? Nobody just stands as, hey, I think I'm going to give a speech today. Usually you're going to have a purpose and a reason. So you have to know what that purpose was. What's that reason? And you could actually kind of work some of this into your introductory as a part of your hook. Especially with the one, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. That's a direct quote that really embodies this speech. That's what this speech is known for. The Martin Luther King Jr. speech is considered the mountaintop speech. So the Susan B. Anthony, she's a suffragette. There's a dynamic. The suffragette movement and the things that women went through in order to gain that vote. I don't think a lot of people realize that. Women lost their families. They lost their lives. They were imprisoned. Husbands were divorcing them because, that was not the way. That was not acceptable behavior. The woman should be content with being at home, taking care of her husband and taking care of her children. And you had a lot of women that really fought to gain that vote. And again, also, it wasn't just with women, even though with the suffragette movement, there was a focus on women, but it's also for minorities as well, is that we need to have equality here. And change is not always a great thing. And there was a lot of pushback, and not just from men were people pushing back on the suffragette movement. Women who were traditionalists, and they were not in agreement and did not feel that there was a need. So they were really getting it not just from the opposite sex, but within their own community of people. So it's just very interesting there, especially just kind of getting a little background on who you're writing about and what was surrounding this. And again, you're looking at 1800s. This is like a big deal. That last speech with Patton, 1944. We're in World War II. This is a big push. This was instrumental, especially when we invaded Normandy and northern France. And it really was a turn in the war. So these are all significant speeches for specific times, for specific audiences. And that's what you are researching. Now, along with that, I hope that you did this. If not, you really need to print off the speeches. They're not super long. It's a couple pages front and back. I think the Susan B. Anthony is 1 page front. Again, now there's not a whole lot of material to work with there, even though it was a significant speech. But I would definitely print those off, and so you're able to annotate. And when you're annotating, writing off to the side, who's the speaker? You can write it at the top. Susan B. Anthony. When did she say this speech? Where was it said? It was said in New York. What were the circumstances surrounding it? She got arrested because she voted. Could you imagine that? It's just crazy. The time period, we talked about that. What were the circumstances surrounding the speech? Who were they speaking to? Who was the audience? Who was that? And there, one part of your research, but also it will fill that out as you've read the speech. And again, I hope you have read it. And by the time you've written this paper, you should have read that through that speech multiple times, if you want to do justice to what the analysis actually is. What were the main points of the speech? You can highlight those out. What were their main drivers? What did they want to get across? What messages? And there's always main points in these speeches, and you want to identify those. Were they relatable to the audience? How did they communicate them? What tools did they utilize in order to communicate, to emphasize those main points? The purpose of this speech. Were logical fallacies used? How were they used? Were they used effectively? Were they, sketch? All right, literary devices. Do not negate the tools that you've already learned from high school. Remember, literary elements are your bones. That's your setting, your date, your protagonist, antagonist. That's kind of like the bones. The devices are those strategies utilized in order to really make those things come alive. Just like with alliteration, something with just repeating a phrase multiple times. We see when we learn alliteration in high school in poetry, it's, Peter Piper picked a pickle peppers, how many pickle peppers Peter Piper picked. But in literature, and if you remember Fahrenheit 451, if you read that or not, we see that using alliteration as a means of showing that he was like really losing it, Denham's dental dentifrice, Denham's dental dentifrice. And the way that Ray Bradbury had worked that into she really showing the main character's mental status, and that he was spiraling, and did that multiple times. And so you can utilize those different literary devices in order to do that. It can be to make a point. In the Martin Luther King Jr. Let me find it real quick. In his speech, I wouldn't stop there. I wouldn't stop there. And, he would go into the next thing. And that's such an emphasis piece of that. And just really how he just painted such a picture. I wouldn't stop there. I'd go on, even to the great heyday of the Roman Empire. He goes a little bit more. But I wouldn't stop there. I'd keep on going, and this is where I would go. Just for you, second half of the 20th century, but I wouldn't stop there. I wouldn't stop there. I'd even do this. And it was just like that. He was just taking you through a tour of history. Such a cool speech. So, what were the strategies that they used? Now, that when you're doing speeches, you want to evoke an emotion. So your first litmus test, or your first gauge, is what parts of that speech evoked your emotion. Did you get excited by it? What kept your attention? And identify that, highlight it, whatever that is. And then the analysis piece is, what was it about that got your attention? Utilizing that story. That's a strategy. That's so cool. Let me see. Were there logical fallacies present? Literary devices present? That's what analysis is. It's taking something and looking deeper and understanding the why. Why something is occurring. Why was a speech given? Why was it successful? Why was this successful? Obviously, we know that these were successful. So this is where this particular assignment is going to differ. Because they're historical speeches, that work has already kind of been done for you. And we have history on our side. So you could say, what was the outcome of that speech? We know with FDR, FDR ended up, he was the longest president in office. You don't suck if you're that long. Fun fact, uh, it was because he had the longest presidency. It was due to his presidency that they instituted term limits for presidents. And it's the first time in history that the United States had a deficit. And that's when it started. And we never got that genie back in the bottle. But what was the result of that? Did he do what he promised? Did he do what he said he was going to do in that speech? Research it. And I'm not going to tell you that. Hopefully you have some grounding from U.S. history from high school. And if you can see through history, did he hold true to the things that he said he was going to do in order to help the people? What were the people better off at the end of his presidency than they were going in? History's on your side on that one. The patent. I would be interested. This was for the Third Army. How many casualties were there? Was this a successful push? Again, you got history on your side. Martin Luther King Jr., that's a little interesting one. This was the one that was the night before he was assassinated, and there's a lot of really really key points that have that future, that vision for the future, and knowing where we are in 2023, is that realized? How was it realized? Was he never lived to see where we are now, and based on that and what history has told us, was he successful? We see the Susan B. Anthony. Well, we know that she is fighting for the right to vote. Well, we know that that's successful because women got the right to vote in 1920. And those other things. Now, were they completely successful? Martin Luther King, or yes, have we made leaps and bounds? Have we really fulfilled the dream that he had for our country? With Susan B. Anthony, yes, the women got the right to vote. The black people got the vote. But what she was envisioning in her speech, did everything come full circle? And what pieces did? What pieces are we still working on as a country? The same thing with the FDR. What was the outcome of that? And that's a part of your success, and that's actually more of something more that's concrete that can say this was successful or not. And you could look and say, some areas, absolutely. But even though he brought us out of the Depression, which he's never doing that, by putting us in a deficit that we've never gotten out of, would we say that was, does it matter? Does it matter? So just, you are going to be writing an outline for me. And again, like I said, I wanted an MLA. Please watch your spacing. I want a strict double space. I don't want to see, we've talked about when you did your last outlines. I have edited all those older outlines, and you need to go back in those comments and you need to see what was wrong. It is an outline. It's not a rough draft. It's not a paper. It's an outline. There's an example of an outline in the MLA packet. You could Google, what does an MLA, what's an outline look like using Roman numerals? You could do that. But the main thing I'm looking for, one, is that it is organized. I don't want tons of space. I wanted a succinct document, strict double space from beginning to end. It is an MLA format. I'm looking for a running header, your heading information, the date properly formatted. Please stop putting the ordinance on the days. You don't put second. You don't do 2 ND, 1 ST, 3 RD. Don't. That's not how you write a date. That's not how you write a date in real life. Why would you do that in academic? And the fact is, it's never been modeled that way. And I don't understand that, and I am taking additional points off. Don't forget, you need to have a title. Outline for the rhetorical analysis of FDR's, nothing to fear but fear itself speech. You do need a works cited page. You do need in-text citations. Again, if I do not have both, you have a 0 for this assignment. Do yourself a favor, work smart, let your outline work for you. But if I don't have in-text citations and I have a works cited, you have a 0 because of no in-text citations. If I have in-text citations and I don't have a works cited page, you have a 0. You have to have both in order for this to be considered for a grade. Okay, we are getting on this. We are heading home to the end of this semester, because after this paper, we're going to head into our final projects. There's not a lot of wiggle room on that. So please, this 40 points. Please make sure that you do your best work. Please look at your papers. Look at your old assignments. Read your comments, please. All right, so I want to do a shift over to your textbook, because you are going to have a quiz in week 9. And the quiz is going to be on the critical thinking that we talked about in part 1. And then the second half of that will be chapter 14 in the 4th edition, or chapter 12 in the 5th edition. And that is on rhetorical analysis. There's a lot of information that is in here. Please make sure that you have read this chapter. A lot of good stuff to consider, and not only just to consider for this particular assignment, but for if you are asked to do an analysis for another class. More likely you're going to have one in 102 also, but you could also have an analysis in other classes as well. So just kind of jumping right on in. All right, rhetorical analysis, paying careful attention how texts of all kinds, not just written communication, influence and sometimes manipulate you. It's the message. You're analyzing the message. Was it influential? What were the strategies that they used? So basically the same thing. Analysis of arguments have become common academic assignments. And then it goes to the discourse, critical analysis, analysis of culture, analysis of argument. These are just different types where you could actually break it down and become more specific. This is a rhetorical analysis on the strategies. The one that you are completing are the strategies utilized in that speech as to why it was effective. All right, rhetoric is the art of using language and media to achieve particular ends. There's a couple words in that paragraph that you do need to be able to define. That's discourse analysis, an objective study of how language and other media work in specific situational texts. The other is critical analysis, a detailed inspection of the text. So it's kind of like another way of saying that. On page 199, take words and images seriously. Spend time with the text. This is telling you how to work through it. And these are strategies for you to do and how you work through the text. Hint, you want to know those. Spend time with the text, and I have notes off to the side so I can fill this out a little bit. You cannot assess the techniques of a writer, speaker, or artist until you know them inside and out. So serious rhetorical analysis requires that you sometimes read line by line and pixel by pixel, asking questions all the time. Write them off to the side. That's annotation. Okay? Now, when you're going through it the first time, just write the questions off to the side. Don't stop to go find the answer. When you start reading through it, read it through it in its entirety. Get all these questions out. Do not stop the flow of what you're doing. So just write a brief question off to the side. Then, maximizing your time, then go back and answer all those questions. Pay attention to the audience. We talked about that. Understanding for whom the text is written can be as important as what it says. Audiences determine the content, shape, and language of most arguments. And that's a true statement. That's with any writing, actually. You have to take your audience into consideration. Mine, I like that M-I-N-E, mine the text, which, when you're mining, you're digging you're digging beneath the surface to get to know something. Take nothing for granted. Give specific emphasis to any rhetorical moves that casual readers of the text are likely to miss. Now, the last line of this, it says, expect to quote often. This is a rhetorical analysis. It is about what they're saying. So yes, there are going to be direct quotes. Get to the point of the quote. But again, if you are using a direct quote, then you must qualify why is it significant. And I'm going to say that again. It doesn't matter. Any time that you use a direct quote, you have to explain its significance as to why you are using it. Why is this evidence? What is it evidence for? That I think a lot of students have problems with using direct quotes effectively and correctly, actually. And so when you don't qualify it, what it looks like is that you're just putting in a bunch of direct quotes. To a teacher, professor, it just looks like you're trying to, make page count. But if you use a quote, you don't say anything about it. It's just like, oh, here's a quote, and I'm going to go on about myself. And if you use your topic sentence, you put a quote in as part of your evidence, and then you never qualify it, you've left your reader hanging, because then you're like, okay, thanks for sharing, but what does that mean? All right, rhetoric is the art of using language in media. Oh, we've done that. Sorry. Need to turn the page. All right, so I'm going to flip over to claiming a topic. We've already talked about this. You want something to make a difference. Choose a text that you can work with. That's where I was telling you guys, choose something. Choose something that's engaging to you, that you want to get your fingers dirty with. Choose a text you can learn more about. You want to be interested in what you're researching. Choose a text with handles. Something that does interesting things. This is more of like somebody says, hey, I want you to do a rhetorical analysis, and they've given you a bigger umbrella. I have made it easier for you where you just choose one of the four. Choose a text that you know how to analyze. Now, this particular concept will come into play in other classes. If you are having to analyze data, concepts, whatever that looks like, choose something that you know how to analyze. And again, I would just ask questions. To me, analysis really is common sense. If you think about, okay, well, I gotta know, am I charging enough for my product? So, okay, I've been doing this deal for 10 years, so that's my time span. And I want to know how much I've been spending a month. I want to know how much I've been selling it for. I'm going to compare and contrast what I'm paying for my materials with as opposed to what I've been selling it for. Am I making a profit or not? I mean, it just kind of is a logical thing. What is it that you're looking for? All right, imagine your audience. In the 4th edition, it's on page 204, and I'm not sure for this particular assignment. I do not agree with this, mainly because it's talking about, you don't want to offend people, and you don't. But I wouldn't not talk about something in the sense of, oh, it may offend it may offend them. If you are talking about a topic of some substance, and you are sticking to the facts, it's not opinionated, this is what it says, I'm just reporting on it. If that offends someone, that's on them. That's not on you. Could you imagine? And we kind of do that already in society. We don't want to talk about certain things because certain people get their feelings hurt. We have got to stop that. So what? Your feelings may get hurt. Why are your feelings hurt? What is it about this that hurts your feelings? We've got to open a conversation and really get to what the meat of it is. Some people, their feelings are just hurt because they like their feelings to be hurt. They want to be the victim. They want to be that person that is speaking out and feeling, it makes them feel good to feel like they're standing for something. But I have to really question, do they really know what they stand for? Or do they just want to be on TV? Do they want to be a part of that group? They want to belong. And that's another thing with human nature. We have this desire to belong. But in that desire, are we hurting ourselves? Because, you know, you don't even know who you're a part of for the need to belong. And I would say that there is probably a fair amount of that. I'm just saying. So I would say in that first part of that, where it was talking about should be relatively restrained because you can't predict how your reader might feel about the argument you are critiquing. If you do this in a professional manner, all right, then that's fine. And remember that, which I thought this was a little contradictory, because earlier on in the semester we're talking about read what's uncomfortable. Sometimes we have got to hear the other side of something, and it is uncomfortable because we don't agree with it. But does it mean that we shouldn't even give consideration to why someone else believes something? That to me is ridiculous. We have to be able to listen to people. When I say ridiculous, I mean that we don't even give consideration to how the other side is. This is a bit different than hurting someone's feelings. I don't like this. And especially with the dynamic that's going on today, where we have that cancel culture, which is so ridiculous, and people don't do things because they don't want to be canceled. Could you imagine if we all just kind of stood up and like, I'm sorry that hurt your feeling. Love to talk about it. And actually, I have done that with a couple people where they were attacking me. And I'm like, I think we need to have a cup of coffee and sit down and just kind of chat it out. And the funny thing is, they never responded to me. Never. Because some people are just so comfortable in the attack mode that when someone actually wants to know why they think the way they do, a lot of them, it's like they lose the wind in their sail. I don't know. Good for you. All right. We go into gathering materials. This is responsible writing. This is about doing your due diligence, looking things up, making sure that things are accurate. A couple things. It said, discover all you can about its author, creator, publisher, sponsor. We've already talked about that. It goes down in the next paragraph. Then read the piece carefully just for information, highlighting names or allusions. Allusions is a literary term. If you don't know what that is, look it up. Or I'm going to define it real quick, and you can write it down. So an allusion is an indirect reference to something from an unrelated text. Remember, allusions could be to a person, could be to a situation that could have relevance. A lot of times, especially, they'll do historical ones. In fact, the Martin Luther King speech does have a lot of allusions. If you do not know that historical allusion that they are referring to, go to Google. Look it up real quick. Write a couple keywords about what that is so you know what it means and why it's significant. Remember also, when you are speaking or writing to an audience, if you're going to be using those allusions, especially when you're speaking or doing speeches, you're taking into account who your audience is and that they will understand they will know what that allusion references. Okay. Then it goes into consider ethos of the author. Ethos, pathos, logos. The next couple pages are for that. And we've talked about that extensively. Remember, that rhetorical triangle is what's giving you balance, and that you have to give equal play to each one of those. If not, the structure weakens. And then is it really a strong analysis? A couple things that I have highlighted. For ethos, the appeal to character. They are swayed by writers or speakers who come across the knowledgeable, honest, fair-minded, and believable. Although such plain-spoken testimony will be rare, instead you may find indication of writers' authority and competence, or lack thereof, in how they describe their credentials, how They are sources and address the readers, or how with the language. So what's the credibility? That's more of a historical thing. What did they do? I mean, I think logic would dictate that all of these speeches and the people that spoke them are credible people. When you put your life in the line and you're willing to die for what you believe for, consider how the writer's plays with emotions. That's our pathos or pathos. The emotional appeal, usually easy to detect, but sometimes difficult to assess. Look for places where a text generates strong feelings to support. I already talked about this, right? Feelings to support its points, win over readers, or influence them. Again, don't take yourself out of that equation. If you're reading through it and something inspires you and you feel like this, this emotional response, highlight it, because that's purposeful. It means that the speaker is doing their job. Consider how appropriate the tactic is for advancing a particular argument. Now, this is where the patent speech is going to come in. There's some language in that. And, we've talked about language before, and I would say overall, profanity in writing is pointless. It doesn't really bring anything to the table at all. But this is a speech. This is military. Now, anyone who has ever either has military people in their family, has been in the military, or anything like that, any type of knowledge, you know that there's a lot of language and it's colorful. And obviously, there's a lot of colorful language in that speech. But you would have to ask, and I would have to question, was that purposeful? Was it needed? Was this situation a place where it was warranted? And I would say most likely yes, because that is the type, one of this type of man, and he was a great leader. He's trying to fire these kids up. They're guys, right? And we talked about language. Women don't particularly like people who use foul language, and we don't like bullies, and we don't like name calling, right? Men are different, and the situation is different. These guys are getting ready to go out and give their lives for, and could you imagine looking around, realizing that there's going to be a lot of these people who are not coming back, and I could be one of them. And so there's a harshness to that speech, but was it a necessary harshness? So that's what I want you to keep in mind. Sometimes, and obviously when there's name calling, that's considered an ad hominem. Well, who is he calling a name? He's calling Hitler. And he is degrading and trying to get them to look like an enemy. So I would have to say, is that effective use of ad hominem? Yeah. Because he could not have these kids going out there and looking at them as humans. Patton had to dehumanize them in order for those kids to do the job that they needed to do. Okay, I have this starred, so hint, 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 you know it. Your challenge in a rhetorical analysis is to point out emotional appeals and to determine whether they move audiences to act humanely or manipulate them into making bad or even stupid choices. And I thought that was a very interesting. That's part of your outcome. How is the audience going to respond to what was done? How would they receive it? And that's again a part of what, the success of the speech. Did it do the job that it needed to do? How many of those kids lost their lives, in that particular battle? And that is historical, by the way. Consider how well reasoned the text is. That's your logos. The appeal for reason and evidence. Look carefully at claims a text makes and whether they are supported by facts, data, and testimony. Ask questions about evidence. Does it come from a reliable source or valid research? Is it up to date? Has it been reported accurately and fully? Has due attention? This depends upon the information or the type of analysis that you're doing. So would this specifically, I'm going to turn the light on so it got really dark here. So This depends on this particular one, as far as the evidence, and I think that'll also be part of the history piece of that you're looking into, and history is very telling, by the way. All right, organizing idea, developing a thesis. It goes through this. Please read this section. This is page 208. It even gives at the top of 208, consider the topic, consider the audience of the text, consider the author, consider the medium and design, examine the language, consider the occasion. Please read through this. This is great stuff. Great stuff. Organizing. Don't expect to come up with a thesis immediately or easily. Oh, does that sound familiar? Now, if you want to start and do like the first draft of a thesis, I'd say yes, absolutely. But when you finish and you get all the way through your paper and you get to your outcome and do that, go back, revisit that thesis statement to make sure it encompasses that paper. Remember, with analysis, you have an idea of where it may go, but usually in research, sometimes it takes a shift, and sometimes it's unexpected. And so allow it to take it where it needs you to, allow it to take you where it's going. Yeah, just kind of read through that. Once you have a thesis or hypothesis, try sketching a design based on the thesis, supporting reasoning. This is helping you to get an outline and get that information together and organized. What facts stood out to you or hold the most strength for your argument? Now, on the second one, it says a line by line or paragraph by paragraph deconstruction of the text. And your commentary on it. I do have a note, but that particular piece of it, that conclusion, that's really not for this assessment or for this assignment. It depends on how in depth you want to go or required by your professor. It's the purpose of that assessment, or that analysis rather. Your outcome, and write this down, your outcome is the success of the speech, which means you will at that point incorporate what history has told us about that speech. Okay? Your concluding paragraph will be more than one. And I better never see an outcome that's only 2 sentences. In conclusion, this was a great speech and famous. That is not an outcome. Okay? You did all that work. Finish the conversation. That's what your conclusion is. And the purpose of this assignment was the success of it. Did it achieve the goal that it was intended to achieve? Choosing style and design. Oh, here we go. Low, medium, and high. You're in high style. Always. All these papers are in high style. And it tells you, avoid I and you, which is first and second person. Have you heard that before? Impression of objectivity and seriousness enhances your ethos. That's why you have to step out of it. And you have to report on it. And also, if you take that posture of being objective and looking out and reporting on something, it actually cleans up the first and second person. Don't put yourself in the conversation. You're reporting on it. And you're just reporting the facts. You're reporting the facts of the speech, what's been identified. Even your outcome is really not your opinion. It's based on what history said about it. Consider middle style. You are not doing middle style. And you will never use low style. So you're living in the high style. And I need you to look at it actually has low, medium, high. Look it up in the index if you need the characteristics of it. If you didn't take notes in class, which I hope you did because we went over this in class. Make the text accessible to readers. Rhetorical analysis should be written as if readers do not have the text you're analyzing in hand or in front of them. Does that sound familiar? Remember, and that's a part of that overview paragraph to kind of give people the idea. And you're going to be using direct quotes, and those direct quotes actually could be those turning point areas. That would be your topic sentence or your claims. And then your evidence, is just really filling that out. Because you're going to have to, that's a part of the purpose of it. Here's the direct quote that represents that main point, and then then you're just filling that filling it out and you're responding to that. And there could be some history kind of weaved into that as well in order to explain why that is significant. Remember, all of your supporting paragraphs should have a claim, evidence, and then significance. Claim, evidence, significance. All three parts, non-negotiable, have to be in each one of those paragraphs. The body paragraphs, your supporting paragraphs. Okay? So I believe that takes us to the end of the chapter. There's a lot of good stuff in here, guys. There's examples of an analysis. You can read through those. But please make sure that you read your books. The one cool thing about these videos is that you're able to go back if you need to timestamp some things. And I think when I make the video, they actually, if you run the cursor over the bottom of it, it actually will give you different sections of the video so you can go right to it. Use the resources that are being provided to you. So, week 9, your quiz will be due on these 2 chapters, and your outline in MLA format will be due Sunday evening, 11:59. When I come back on that following Monday, October 30th, then we will, now that you have all your grunt work done, now we can talk about writing that final paper. And then this will be our last writing project that gives you the skills that you need in order to create your evaluation project, which will be your final exam. Okay. So I hope you guys have a great week. I will be thinking about you in Panama, and I will see you on Monday. Just so you know, as you know, there's not a lot of internet where we're probably going. We are staying in a town, Chihuahua, so we do sometimes have access there, but during the day we are going to remote areas. I will try and check emails at night. It really depends on Wi-Fi and the internet access, if I can answer you or not. If not, when I get back, obviously I'll see you that Monday, and then we can roll through everything. So if you have a question, shoot me an email. I will try, but please do not expect, better to not expect it than get it. It's like, oh, a surprise. So, but if there is something, go ahead, and I will be checking email, or I'll be trying to check email anyway. So you guys have a fantastic weekend, a fantastic week, and I will see you on Monday the 30th in class. Have a great day.